Welcome back. It's time to look at the weekend newspapers, and to help me make sense of the headlines, I'm joined by Dineo Fako. She is the senior journalist at Business Report, and with Rupiwe Madzena, who is, of course, ENCA's business journalist. Ladies, thank you so very much for your time. Of course, we obviously know the front pages are full of that incredible, emphatic win of the Springboks yesterday. But it's our job, of course, to also look at the insides of the newspapers. And just before that match happened, Moody's, of course, changed its outlook. Rupiwe, let me start with you. It was to be expected. We've just interviewed the Minister of Public Enterprises. We've interviewed the Deputy Finance Minister. From what you've heard, and we're apparently going to be having a new CEO for Eskom in the next few days, are we going to be able to change Moody's mind anytime soon?
They say, and it's their words, that it's unlikely. So the rating that we got of a negative outlook from Stable says to South Africa, you've got 12 to 18 months to get your act together. Otherwise, we will, like the other two major ratings agencies, downgrade you to junk. What they say, though, the reason that it's going to be unlikely is that the erosion of the country's fiscus on the back of the likes of Eskom and SAA has been so deep that government won't be able, within the 12 to 18 months, to revive the fiscus. And they also say it doesn't help that the socio-economic divisions within the society are so deep, and the state capture, they actually put it in inverted commas in their report, the state capture has, taken away all of the country's public finances. Those factors are going to make it that much more difficult for government to repair the fiscus and really get money back into the economy.
Now, Dineo, the finance minister said he was praying that Moody's would look upon us kindly and give us that opportunity. What do you think was missing from what he said, from what the public enterprises minister said, and even the president's plans with his investment conference that made Moody's come to the decision that it had?
I think one of the issues that Moody's has looked at is the ballooning debt to GDP. It's really uncontrollable, but it's run away, and it seems that the government is grappling to get to control it. And it paints a very bleak picture of where the country is, because the debt to GDP is 60%, and it's expected to go to 80% in the next in the medium term, so it's quite scary for a country which is supposed to be one of the emerging economies in the world. So I think some economists have said that the chances of downgrades are higher than 50%. So I think it will really take a miracle for us not to be downgraded in the next 18 months or so.
Rupiwe, one of the big stories of this week is the investment conference. It's the second one. President Ramaphosa said to us that over 1,000 people have committed. The Deputy Finance Minister just said that it's not just a talk shop. People have actually made commitments. To what extent will that investment conference be impacted on by Moody's outlook, or do you think that investors are confident of the government's determination to see some of the reforms through that are on the table?
We must actually give government credit, because they are determined, as you've seen with recent developments, to really change the landscape of the country, and that is what I think will keep investors interested in South Africa. So we must understand that there's not necessarily actual investment that's coming into the country. It's more of a commitment. So what's going to happen is potential investors will come in, engage with the president, engage with the president's colleagues, and see where they are in terms of policy direction, and perhaps make decisions on that. Those that do invest, it's key to note the sectors that will be invested in. Minister Tito Mboweni spoke in his speech about tourism in particular. So we want to be seeing sectors like tourism, term. A big one which has not been doing well recently is manufacturing, construction, agriculture. So if we are going to be seeing investors commit or actually put money into the country, government is going to have to direct those finances into key sectors. You'll remember with the stimulus package that the government gave last year, we really don't know where that money went, do we? We were just told there was a stimulus package that was going to be pumped into the economy, but we don't know where it went, and we didn't see any kind of growth in any key sector.
If the CEO of Eskom is announced within days, as Minister Pravin Gordhan just told us, do you think that that is likely to lift sentiment at this investment conference?
Yes, it's likely to bring some certainty to Eskom, because having a state the biggest state-owned institution without a CEO, really it brings uncertainty. So it would be the right move to make by the government, and also it will also be important for the government to ensure that the latest plan that was announced by the minister this week, that it is implemented. As you know, Minister talked about that this new reform at Eskom is going to focus on changing the business model. It's going to focus on ensuring that the Eskom is divided into 3. Transmission is going to be the focus, and also ensuring that transmission does in fact beef up revenue. So we need to make sure that these plans really are not just plans that are good on paper, but we need to make sure that these plans...
Rupiwe, I see you nodding your head. Now, the minister's told us what characteristics he's looking for in a leadership team and in a CEO. I'm going to ask you to play Sangoma. Who do you think are the front runners? Who has the nerves of steel, the will, and the integrity and the brazenness to throw down the gauntlet to the different parties and say, let me take this institution and fix it, and leave me alone whilst I'm doing it?
One name that comes to mind, and you actually asked, you put the name out there, Mark Barnes. He has been, in his tenure at the post office, been able to stage a phenomenal turnaround of the institution. I mean, I think with all the CEOs that we've seen running state-owned entities, even at SAA, Vuyani Jahana, these are people that are decisive. They know how to implement strategy. They know how to do it within a time period. But this talk of political interference that always is talked about by them is very clear in the fact that they decide to throw in the towel. So if you could get a Mark Barnes, even Maria Ramos, really running the separation of Barclays and ABSA very well, those kind of level-minded people that are decisive and that know what direction to take to produce certain results would be the kind of people we're looking out for. Not political appointees, nothing of the sort.
On that question of political appointees, Dineo, these state-owned companies are often places, and through the state capture years we've seen it. It was as a consequence of political manipulation. Boards were put in place, people that didn't have the qualifications, because these institutions were hollowed out for people's personal financial gain. So this is going to be a very loaded appointment, one way or the other. It's not going to be easy to navigate politically. Given that, who would you put your money on?
Wow, it's a difficult one. But I think Mark Burns, I think it's a good choice. As Refula said, you need to be able to speak to your stakeholders, and the critical stakeholder at Eskom right now is the labor section, the unions. You need to bring them on board. You need to make them understand that this is where we are. It's do or die.
It's interesting that you say that. Rupiwe, when I was on a panel with Mark Barnes, he said that was the first thing he did at the post office. He actually took the unions through the balance sheet of the business and said, look, this is what we are involved in. So if we want to get here, if we all want to get paid, if we all want to be rewarded, these are the things that we're going to have to do. Is he the kind of guy that will be able to get a NUMSA, a NUM, various other unions on board in a place like Eskom that is bloated, where the corruption is systemic and where the rot runs really deep?
You know, and this is not to undermine the unions, but I think a lot of them don't understand the balance sheet of the companies, particularly Eskom. We hear about the 450 billion debt and this and that, but they don't get to sit down with the board members or directors and be explained to, this is the situation that's actually we're faced with, and then for them to trickle that down to their members. This is something that's never communicated to them, and you'll see within wage negotiations and things like that where people are asking for crazy non-inflation related increases and things like that. So he is, you know, ANUMA is a very difficult union from the engagements with mining companies in particular. But I think if you can sit them down and show them, we've actually literally got R2 left in our bank account, and if we don't do 1, 2, 3, no one will have a job.
Okay, so I'm going to ask our technical team to put the front page of the Sunday Times on, which says Siyabonga, of course, and it's about the message, I think, that the Springbok captain said yesterday: if we pull together, we can do it. Yes. Is that the attitude, Dineo, that we should adopt when it comes to fixing our economy, and most importantly, the power utility, which is, of course, the engine in many ways of that economy, and determines whether or not we get investors and we do get the growth that we require?
It is definitely the attitude that we need to embrace, the fact that we need all hands on deck, as the Minister Tito Mboweni said just after the Moody's announcement. He said, we all need to pull together. This is our country, and only we can save us. We can save ourselves. So it's a group effort. If we can see what the Springboks have done to unite the country, to reignite the hope, to reignite the fact that anything is possible, then perhaps we can, make sure that we can improve our economy, small bits and pieces.
Rupiwe, I'm going to end with you. Siya Kolisi yesterday, when he thanked South Africa, actually thanked different types of people, from homeless people to people in taverns to people in businesses. As the Springbok captain, he's aware enough to know that we're dealing with deep inequalities in our country. Do you think our political leadership and our business leadership is aware of that, and that unless you have inclusive growth, you're going to sit with the same problems?
I think there's an awareness, there's a huge awareness, but we've dug ourselves into such a deep hole. How do we get ourselves out of that hole? And only when we get ourselves out of the hole are we able to deal with that deep inequality that you mentioned. But there's this thing that the leaders are going through right now is how do we even get out of it? And I heard someone on the radio once saying that the only way is to get ourselves out of this rut is to arrest. Let's use that investment that Tito Mboweni mentioned on Wednesday into the NPA. Let's arrest all of them, all the corrupt leaders that we have, because as long as they stay in government, the deeper that hole gets.
Absolutely, the impunity has to end. Ladies, thank you so very much. That was, of course, Dineo Farko, senior journalist at Business Report, and Rupiwe Madzena, ENCA's very own business journalist. Well, you've had your fix for the week. See you again next Sunday. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.